What's going on, sports fans? My name is Ryan. This is the DFS 5-pack, another installment of our tip of the day. If you haven't caught one of these yet, it's just taking about 5 minutes each day, discuss some of the little nuances of DFS, baseball, basketball, and football, and just try to, up your game. If you're not getting better, your competition around you is. So we want to win some money, right, guys? And let's just discuss what we can do to up that profit margin, I guess is a good way to look at it. If you are new to the station and you want more videos, it's real easy. Hit that red button that says subscribe. Get notifications. Sounds like a pretty simple process for me. Thumbs up is always sincerely appreciated. So for those of you guys who do that every single day, truly and legitimately from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. That does help, keep us rolling on YouTube. And every single day we do this, guys. Anybody who donates a minimum $2 pledge to patreon.com, the link is down below. You get a 1 out of 8 shot to get a free month of DFS services. And we also, for anybody who sets up their profile that day, we will email you the members only video for the NBA or MLB advice. One more thing before we get into today's tip of the day. If you happen to be a fan of the Packers, Brewers, or Bucks, I have started a new station. Good to just be pushing discussions around Packers, Brewers, and Bucks. If these are your teams, go subscribe to it. It's called Wisconsin Sports Talk, and the link to it is below. So let's move into today's tip. Now, when we talk about stacking, most of people know what stacking is from a DFS perspective because it's most applicable to the game of baseball, but it also has its way of being effective in a variety of other sports, but most specifically, we want to talk about the NBA today. And I think for a lot of people who are new to NBA DFS, they don't quite understand why stacking can be beneficial in NBA, nor when is the good times to do it, nor when are the bad times to do it, and things like that. So I don't think it's a concentration point for a lot of people when it should be. So it's best to be used on smaller slates. Now, on a bigger slate, let's say we got 10, 11 games. That doesn't mean you can't go 3, 4 deep on a game, but it's not as desirable to want to go 6 or 7 deep on a game than it might be on, say, a 2, 3, or a 4 game slate, for example. And stacking, again, it can mean different things. It's slate dependent. It can mean 4 guys. It can mean 5 guys, 6 guys, 7 guys. It just depends on the specific slate, on the other games around it, and what you're trying to accomplish. And going back to what I brought up earlier, why I think newer DFS NBA players don't really get it is I think they want to try to find the best person for each game, thinking, well, I'm going to find the guy who's going to score 45 points tonight because the matchup's good or he's going to be on fire or whatnot. And oftentimes, the number one thing you can do, find that game with pace and find the game that's going to be close. Both Matt and I were really, really hard all in last night on the Washington-Sacramento game. And in a lot of ways, it was a bit of a letdown. Now, it wasn't bad, and a bunch of the guys were pretty good, but it wasn't as good as I thought it could be. Sacramento was awful at hitting shots for periods of that game, specifically in the first quarter. And even with that game being a bit of a letdown, now, I'm saying a bit of a letdown because it was close and it was down to the wire. So the guys that you expected to play got their full allotment of minutes. I just thought there was a little bit more potential. And I feel like if you played that game over again and the guys were shooting the ball a little bit more effectively, we would have had even more quality plays out of that game. Because if you look at it last night, Beal, Satoransky, Portis, De'Aaron Fox, Bielisa, Harry Giles, 6 guys were all pretty good from a GPP perspective. And there was a whole bunch of other guys that were mediocre, i.e. Bogdanovich, Harrison Barnes is a guy that I liked, Trevor Ariza. I mean, Jabari Parker, these guys were all fine. So there was about 4 or 5 guys that were okay for cash games and about 6 guys that were good for cash or GPP. So that's like 11 guys in one game. But I'm telling you, if that game plays out differently, it could be even a little bit better. And what you're really looking for and where the big money comes from that game is when it hits overtime. Most nights, if you look at who wins GPPs, it's very often going to be somebody who's got several guys from whatever game it was that went to overtime that night. Now, you can't guarantee or really predict overtimes, but you can't get to overtime if the game isn't close. So it's just another reason to really want to target games that are close to get that full allotment of minutes. This is going to seem like the most common sense statement I've probably ever uttered, but your dudes don't score points if they're not on the floor. And if there's a 25-point discrepancy, guys like Giannis, LeBron, Westbrook, they're not on the floor when there is that big of a point discrepancy. So that is why you are looking for that key game. Sometimes if you're stacking a popular game, like again, Wizards and Kings were popular last night. you can look at stacking a few of the less popular guys within that game if you're trying to be a little bit different. How many lineups you run is, what kind of exposure you can give to them. We talked about Thomas Bryant last night from the Wizards and why Bobby Portis was the guy you wanted. But if you were doing 10 lineups, maybe fading Portis to go with Bryant once or twice made sense. Now, ultimately, Portis was the better play, and he was the right play last night. But if you're fading a popular game and don't think you can get at the top by rolling a lot of chalk, you can. But if you just want to be different once or twice within the game, that might be all that you need to do. Now, to me, when you look in something that has worked out well for me on a good number of occasions, and this is very often slates that we don't actually cover from a product standpoint, is when you get like one of those Sunday afternoon games or slates where it's like 2 or 3 games. It's a poorly researched slate because people are, busy with, weekend type of shit, right? And busy with their families and friends and getting drunk and working around the house or whatever it might be that floats or screw up for that weekend. Stacking the less popular games. So, for example, let's say Philadelphia is playing Oklahoma City and it's got a very high total and everybody's all in on this game. Meanwhile, you got Cleveland versus the Raptors. And I just say that because most people would tend to believe there's going to be a major point discrepancy. I'm only thinking of that one from last night because these two teams just met. And oddly enough, Cleveland beat the crap out of the Raptors, but you play that game 100 times and the Raptors run away with it probably half the time. So that was just why I use that example. So we go back to this 2-game slate. Most people are going to be 5, 6, 7 deep on the Philly and OKC game. You stack the other one and just cross your fingers and pray or hope, because more than likely, if you're trying to be contrarian there, you're being contrarian because the other place is the better place on paper to go. But if OKC and Philly is not high scoring, if there is a major point discrepancy one way or the other, and that game, lets down, meanwhile, the other game is, really, really close, that is an easy way to like get multiple times your buy-in back and by going with the less popular route. Now, you have to know that in cash games, that's not the proper route. But if you're trying to be contrarian within GPPs, we like to be contrarian on small slates with the less popular game, as long as it's like not like a crazy play. Like if you got Sacramento and Washington like last night, and the other game is San Antonio, and I'm trying to think of another bad comparison. Just think of the whatever crappiest game you can think of. You're probably throwing your money away more times than not, and that's not a place that I would have chose to be contrarian. This works really, really well in baseball as well. So what Matt and I both love from a baseball perspective is when you get one of like those 3-game day slates and the top end pitchers, the guys who are the most expensive, are only a little bit better than the bottom tier pitchers, because still natural progression is for people to always try to pick on the low cost pitchers and get, pay for the high price pitchers. Well, that usually is good, but when there's not a big discrepancy, but the ownership discrepancy is significantly different, that's a great way to go. And, especially with those day slates on Wednesdays and Thursdays for baseball. So that's what I got, guys. Thank you very much. See you guys in a little bit for our regular scheduled DFS advice. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and talk to you soon.